May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive.
Alive is an online course that helps you to reveal, meet and heal the patterns that cause you to lose your most precious resource, your life force energy. So if you're tired of feeling tired, visit starlight-temple.com/alive and use the code podcast to get a half-price discount on this process that aligns you into aliveness. Hello and welcome to May the Life Force be with you. And our intention with this episode is that you feel your life force, you understand it, you welcome it, and you live with it.
Thank you, Karila. And welcome everybody. And today we have a guest with us, Susie Smith. And Susie is Hi, Susie. So Susie is a medicine woman, a trauma-informed breathwork therapist, and she fuses neuroscience with a spirituality and frequency alignment, which awakens the body's wisdom and higher intelligence to bring the body online, clearing deep-rooted patterns to hold and embody radical self-empowerment. And I feel this is really interesting, Susie. I'm going to finish your intro in just a sec, because we've just been talking quite a bit recently about neuroscience, about science, about physics, about quantum physics, and about frequency. So I'm already excited to dive into learning more. But Susie practices her work through a combination of one-to-ones, workshops, and 8 to 12 week personalized programs. So it really feels, Susie, like you work very deeply and personally with people in your work. And the final piece that you mentioned that I found really interesting in your bio that you sent us was really about exploring the nervous system, and the nervous system really being that missing link, I guess, between our individual way of being and then perhaps the link that a lot of people don't make, which is then the ripple it has on other people around us, our nervous system, and the energy and the frequency that we hold in that life force ourselves. So I already have about 10 tangents we could go off in the conversation, but perhaps you could start just by sharing. Let's start with the nervous system. And
let's start there.
Right in there.
Yeah, let's just start with a conversation around our nervous system. And perhaps you could start by sharing with us what the nervous system means to you in terms of life force energy.
Lovely. Good segue. I think the nervous system, for me personally, which is why I do what I do, was that piece of the puzzle where finally everything made sense, is into why my behaviours and my patterns had been so difficult to move through, to heal. And it's interesting when we talk about how the nervous system has an effect on everybody around you as much as it does on yourself. And I think that's the recognition of how important it is in life force, because it's the nervous system that will instantly tell you whether or not you feel safe in a group, in a one-to-one situation, in any environment that you're in. And if you don't understand that message, nothing feels safe. So there is no life force, because you kind of cut that connection between safety and life because you feel threatened. So for me, the nervous system, when I started to recognize, because you can use a lot of what we call top-down modalities, which are talking therapies and things that work particularly with the mind. They're never detrimental, but all they ever do is maintain something. They'll just give you this maintenance level of being able to cope, as it were, with things, and obviously work it out and understand it, definitely from a mental perspective. But the nervous system for me is the bottom-up approach. It works with the bigger amount of information that comes from the body to the mind, to the brain. And I think unless you can get into that pathway, the affect health that works on those pathways, nothing ever really connects. You just kind of, it's like trying to eat soup with a fork. You're you're going one step forward, two steps back all the time. And the minute you connect to the nervous system and you make friends with that part of your body, that system can come online and you take back what we call healthy control, which then means your safety element in groups, in relationships, to yourself becomes a clear and astute pathway, and you've got that ability to just connect. So life force can exist healthily and safely, and you can have that influence on others, which is what we call, I don't really like the term positive and negative, but for the context of it, once you've got an understanding of your nervous system, your presence and your ability to affect people will only be in a positive way.
If somebody's not feeling safe, they're disconnected from life force energy. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that more, like in terms of because they've gone into survival mode, or why do you think they've disconnected, or why are you saying they're disconnecting from life force energy when they're not feeling safe?
So one of the things I work with regards to the nervous system is a thing called a polyvagal theory, and it's the theory of connection. It's the theory of safety and connection. Mm-hmm. So if we don't feel safe in our bodies, we will constantly be on that lookout for the threat. We don't trust. We don't connect. And as humans, connection is a biological imperative. Mm-hmm. So if we don't feel safe, we are not going to connect. We will connect with those that are possibly bad for us because it's a repetitive pattern that the nervous system is used to. So it will go into the negative, again, for context, the negative elements of relationships. It's where we create the toxicity in relationships, mm-hmm. because the nervous system will always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And
wow.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Just because familiar is safe.
Yeah. Familiar to the nervous system will be something that it will prefer to do because it doesn't work on linear time. So whatever happens to you in your lifetime, whether you're 3, 33, 63, 93, doesn't matter. The nervous system doesn't have an age to it. It just recognizes sensations and messages. So it won't know when something's passed. It won't know when the threat has gone, but it will recognize, when that happens, we do this. I know what to do when we do this. So it will always choose familiarity, whether that be healthy or unhealthy, it doesn't matter. That makes sense?
There's no mind in this. There's just the nervous system going, familiar is safe.
Yeah. Familiar
is safe.
Yeah.
Go back to what you know. We're unsafe.
Yeah. So I also have this kind of, and this is just my perspective, that I feel that the ego and the nervous system are very much in alignment with regards to, I feel like the nervous system is almost a physical manifestation of the ego because they both have the same job, and that's to keep you safe. But it doesn't always mean what they're doing is safe. Does that make sense? Like, we know that we need the ego. We're not trying to, people that say, I don't have an ego. It's, you need it. So, because it keeps us safe. But there's a line that can cross. Exactly the same with the nervous system. So it's there to keep you safe, but it can also cause us more problems if real safety doesn't feel familiar. The nervous system and the ego won't let you go there.
I mean, that's profound, like I'm thinking of many moments in my life where my whole system rejected real safety mm-hmm. in order to become unsafe again because that was my comfort zone.
And that's where you knew how you responded in that moment. You knew what, so to go into something that your nervous system didn't understand is crossing that line, and it's the unknown. And that's the importance of this work, is I take people across that threshold and say, you know, you want real change, it has to happen in the body, it has to happen in the nervous system, because 80% of the information comes from the body to the brain. 20% comes from the brain to the body. So if you're trying to think your way into doing something different and you've got one line of traffic going down, 4 lanes of traffic going up, I mean, it speaks for itself. You have to work with the body and the nervous system to allow the thoughts then to go, we can change this habit, this behavior, this program. And everything starts to come online, and you know, it's neuroscience in the fact that you've got to reprogram the neural pathways.
Yeah, I always say in my work that it's just not possible to think your way out of a stressful situation. It's not possible to sit there in that kind of record that's stuck in the same groove and expect the outcome to change. And what we always say is that you need some kind of physical movement, or our good old breath, which I know is a big part of your work, Susie. You need something that physically shifts something in your body to release that energy, that feeling, that emotion, that physical reaction to the circumstance that you're in order to be able just to create that tiny little moment of opportunity to change the thought. But to change the thought without that physical movement first is almost impossible. Would you agree?
You can't change the thinking if you're in your fight or flight response, or you're in your freeze response, and that's your go-to survival tactic, because that's your unsafe space. So you won't be able to then override that and think in a rational context. You will always be in a reactivity, because that's the way you need to be to survive. So what we have to do is learn how to bring the breath up. The breath, that's not a classic. Yeah, the breath saying, "Come on, talk about me." I use the breath for this very reason, is to bring people into what we call the ventral vagal. So it's our flow state, homeostasis, rest and digest, parasympathetic. And until you're in that part of your nervous system, you can't react, you can't respond. You need to regulate to reason. And that's what I say to my clients, really simple.
I love that. Regulate to reason. I love that.
Yeah. And it keeps it simple. That's the other thing about when I'm working with people, is I just say, don't, go to state, not story. Because the problem is when we get into our trauma and we get into our trauma responses, and just caveat here, a trauma response is not a nervous system response. So, if you're in your fight or flight, that's not a trauma response. It's a nervous system response, but you can get stuck in that state, and that state then will create a trauma response. So, overthinking, OCD, addiction, abandonment issues, that's a trauma response. And until you can bring yourself into parasympathetic and into that safe zone in the body, it's only then that the messages for safety will start to reach the mind, and you'll be able to, what I call, choose a disconfirming experience. So you choose to do the opposite of what you've always done, so you disconfirm the experience.
Wow. Rather than affirm the experience, rather than affirm the system that you're not safe. So I want to ask, perfect timing. I had a nervous system morning.
Well, you did.
Basically, I've got a course launching, and I've got new technology that isn't working, and my website stopped working. Like, the things that really stress my nervous system out are like these tech things that I don't know how to do. And so literally before coming onto this live, I felt myself go into what would be described as a nervous system response of feeling overwhelmed, unsafe, heightened stress, lack of life force, and so I'm bringing that to this conversation because it happened just before, and I'm just like, what is your advice to that? Because I think a lot of people go into that quite regularly.
Yeah. And the thing is, we need to. Don't get me wrong. We're not trying to stay in parasympathetic all the time, because that, again, is just equally as unsafe. That's the people pleaser element. And you're just like making sure that everyone else is all right. And it just keep it, it's fawning. So that is really a response from your body because you are overwhelmed. And what it's telling you is, your system's getting too much information, sensory overload. It's in that moment you use your breath. It's in that moment you use your breath and you bring yourself back into what I call green. Okay, so I work with the traffic light system because of the polyvagal theory, and it's about recognizing, okay, am I regulated or dysregulated? So you're keeping it simple, because it's very easy to go, well, this is happening and that's happening, and then they said this and and then you're in the story. So I always say to my clients, state, not story. Where are you on the nervous system ladder? So what you're talking about is sympathetic, which I call yellow. You've not got any green. So what happens when we get overwhelmed and we go into what we, can create as a trauma response, where maybe we try too hard, or we can't sleep, or, whatever it is that we do because our nervous system is dysregulated, what we want to be able to do is bring it back into a regulated state, easily bringing it back to green. And the only reason that you felt the way you felt this morning was because green wasn't there. Yep. So as soon as you bring green in, as soon as you bring in your parasympathetic to work with the yellow, to work with the sympathetic, that's when fear changes to excitement. Mm-hmm. Exactly the same sensation in the body, but the message is different. Mm-hmm. So you bring green in and it stays with the yellow. So it's not like we want to get rid of the yellow and just be green. We've got to blend the states. So it's about bringing something in, a practice that you can use that will allow the body to bring the parasympathetic online. And that would be something like the breath, which anyone can do.
And I know Fiona is a massive pioneer for these moments of breath, but I'm just wondering if either of you have anything. So if somebody's resonating with like, yeah, my tech's going wrong and I can feel that yellow zone. Like, what's the best breath to do? What's the best?
I always say to people, the easiest one to do, and that what I find is the most effective, because I use it myself, is not conscious connected breath, because that can take you into a heightened state, and that's not something you should really do without facilitation and really know what you're doing, because you can overactivate the body. But 4-7-8, the 4-7-8 technique. Now, if you struggle with anxiety and you're in a high yellow state, you wouldn't do the middle section. So you wouldn't do the hold. You would just do the 4, breathing in for 4 through the nose, making sure that you're activating the diaphragm. That's the most important part of any breath work. If you want to bring in the parasympathetic, you need to activate that belly breath, because the vagus nerve will get activated and send that signal of safety when your belly expands on the inhale, because all of the internal organs which have the vagus nerve wrapped around them start to get a little massage when you expand the tummy. So automatically the body thinks, oh, okay, yeah, we're safe. Because when you're not safe, you will contract the stomach, all of the internal organs will retract, and you breathe only in your chest. So it's about lengthening the breath down to the lower lungs to enable the body to receive the breath first and foremost. So you just breathe in for 4 through the nose, slow count of 4. If you're not struggling with anxiety, you can hold for a count of 7. And then you exhale as if you're blowing through a straw, controlled, so you're not just blowing it all out. You just let it out as if you're blowing through a straw. Nice controlled 8, count of 8. Now, you might find when you get to the bottom of that 8, you feel like you haven't blown all the air out. That's okay, because we want to get some CO2 in the body. We need to increase the CO2 tolerance of the body, because that's what carries the oxygen around the system.
Would you maybe guide us through a couple of rounds of that breath, just for the experience for anyone that's listening, so they can get a sense?
First time we've done breath.
Yeah, why not? Perfect. Yeah.
So it might help Camilla for the rest of her day as well.
Please help me come out of the yellow.
Let's get. Well, we want the yellow there. We want to bring the green online, and that's normally what happens. And to make it really simple for people is when we're stuck, the nervous system stuck in red or yellow. If you imagine two kids being left alone in a house, there would be chaos. No adult there whatsoever. The green is the parent. The green is your parent. The green is the one that comes in and holds the hand of the red and yellow and says, it's all right, we got this. So it's not that we want to get rid of those. We just want to bring the green in to hold the hands of the red and yellow and go, okay, we can do this. We can regulate. So we're going to call in the green. And I sometimes say to people that when you're doing this exercise, try and imagine the colour green. You could either be in nature, you could just see a lovely green stone, but try and visualise the colour green. And try and visualize that green sitting in your heart space, because that's where I tend to bring the ventral vagal is up into the heart. So you want to just sit nice and comfortable. Ideally have your back supported, because if you don't have your back supported, there's a lot of tension and you don't want to have any tension in the upper back or the diaphragm. So just allow yourself to take a moment to find a comfortable space. And then you're just going to breathe in through the nose for a slow count of 4. Put your hands on your tummy, because you really want to remind yourself to feel that in-breath come right down into the lower belly. So just breathing in now for 4 through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feel that belly expand under the hands. And then you're holding 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now just gently let the body soften. Exhale through the mouth as if blown through a straw. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then repeat again. Nice big inhalation in through the nose. 2, 3, 4. And then hold. No tension in the hold. Keep the body soft. Exhale. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, sorry, that was hold, wasn't it? How did I get that back to front? That was, well, at least we know it's live. Yeah.
Laughter is good for bringing you out of bringing the green in.
Oh, dear. Sorry, folks. Do you want me to do another round and then we can?
Yeah, do another round.
Okay. Right. Okay. So hands on the tummy, softening the body, and just taking that nice big. That laughing is good for the diaphragm as well.
So good.
Yeah. So we're just going to bring that breath in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feeling that belly expand. Then you're just going to hold gently, no tension. Just watch for the body can sometimes contract on that hold. So just hold in 4, 5, 6, 7. And then exhaling through the mouth as if blowing through a straw. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then straight back into that lovely nose breath, nice and big, feeling the belly expand. 2, 3, 4. Hold, appreciating that breath in the body, that prana, that life force. Hold it. 4, 5, 6, 7. And then exhale as if blowing through a straw. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And as I said, if you're somebody that struggles with anxiety, you might want to leave that hold out, or you might want to just hold it for 2. All right. Breath holds for people with anxiety can sometimes amplify it. So just work with what is right for you. You'll know your body, you know yourself. But if you practice that for an absolute minimum of 8 minutes, you can't expect to do 2 or 3 rounds like we've just done and then think, well, it's not working. You've got to give the body time to acclimatize. So you need to do it for, I'd say, a minimum of 5 to 8 minutes, depending on how yellow you are, how red you are, you know, how much. You stop after 5 to 8 minutes and just check in. I normally say to people, give it a 1 to 10. So if you started before and you knew that you were 6, 10 being right off the charts, 1 being, So if you're a 6 in yellow, you want to bring it down to 0, stop after 5 minutes and just check in. Where am I on that chart? Am I down? Or do I need a bit more?
And can you just describe what a yellow state is and what a red state is?
Yes. So yellow is the kind of nervous energy. So it's, as I say, fear and excitement have exactly the same sensation in the body. The only difference is the nervous system, depending whether it feels safe or unsafe. So it's anything that kind of, it's what we call the mobilized state. So it's that kind of jittery, anxious, can't sit still, fidgety, overthinking, OCD. It's anything where your breath gets faster as well on a physical sensation. You might also find that you struggle to digest your food. A lot of people that are highly anxious or highly in their sympathetic nervous system have breathing dysfunction and IBS. Very common. And I can have clients that come to me with severe anxiety, really bad IBS, and within 3 months I've got rid of both of those things. But the doctors have never even considered it's their breath and their nervous system. Never even.
Our digestive system shuts down, doesn't it? Our digestive system, our reproduction system, everything goes into that fight or flight mode. So it makes sense, doesn't it, that if we're trying to run from something, whether it's literal or metaphorical, we need all our energy to go into sprinting away and not into digesting our food or doing any of the other things that serve us well and keep us safe. We just literally shut down our system. So I strongly believe that there is a big correlation between an increase in gut health or deterioration in gut health, an increase in gut health problems, and the fact that our systems are in that sympathetic state.
And also, we're not breathing correctly. Because if the breath is part of the autonomic nervous system, which is part of the nervous system, and it correlates with what state you're in. Your breath will dictate. Your breath will change. So I also work with a concept where I heal the breathing pattern. Your breathing will tell me what you're holding on to on an unconscious level. So I'm trained to read people's personalities by the way they breathe. And when I say that, everyone goes, don't read me. But it's in a particular, I do something called a breath analysis. So the client has to be laying down and I watch the way that their breath moves. And people normally with a dysfunctional breath pattern will have other issues like increased anxiety, IBS, depression. We're not talking about severe depression and bipolar. That's a whole nother level. But, mild depression can be because we're in shutdown. So red, what we were talking about earlier, red is that kind of, it's the immobilized state. So red in comparison to yellow is when we totally shut down. It's that, don't anyone come near me. I don't need anybody. I just want to stay here in my little cocoon and be left alone. I don't want to communicate with anyone. No one can help me. So there's no point me asking. That will shut down. Metabolism starts to slow down. We want to sleep all the time. It's literally like a hibernation. It's that freeze.
Can it also be a flight? Can it also be a because while I was trying to deal with this tech thing, there was a moment where I was like, shut down, shut the website down. Do you know? And I felt myself completely reject the task in front of me. Is that included in it, or
well, you can't. The thing is with the nervous system, it can spin through all of these things really quickly.
Right.
So you'd have to always start in yellow with that kind of and then you go into red right, that's it, I'm done. No. And then the thing is as well, when we want to bring the nervous system back up the ladder, we can't just go red green. We have to bring it back into an immobilized. We have to bring it up into the yellow before we can get into the safe space. So, it's the flexibility. You've probably got quite a good flexible nervous system, Karila, because of all the work you do. So your nervous system is unlikely to stay stuck somewhere for too long, but you would still recognize the attributes of what is happening in that moment. Mm-hmm. So, you can have both, but it normally is one and then the other, and then they can blend.
I see. Amazing. And is there a correlation between this and what I'm seeing in this is that it's also to do with how much life force energy is then flowing through like the way, like the quality of the life force energy that is then flowing through what I would call the nervous meridian energetic system. So it's like what is your life force doing? Has it gone? How I'm saying is like water. It's like, is the life force energy storming right now, or is it like beautiful?
That's
calm?
such a lovely analogy. Yeah,
frozen.
Exactly, frozen, stormy, or flowing. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And the thing is, the green is life force for me. Green is nature.
Okay.
Well, it correlates so much with the world around us, and nature is a safe space. I mean, not if you're, maybe on a mountain somewhere with no provisions, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In context, nature is a safe space. So, that green is life force. So, as I said to you earlier about if green goes offline, like we're screwed. Like that we're not in our life force. We're not in our power. We're in the fear. We're in the program. We're in the trauma. We're in the past. We're in our mind.
We're in the lack, because what we're lacking is life force, but our story is responding to all the lack we have experienced. Then we go into trauma response
because it's familiar. Like having abundance and having life force, if you've had an experience up to that point that's been troubled, isn't safe. So life force, the story that can then create is, well, life force has never been good to me, so I'm not worthy of it.
I don't trust it.
I don't trust it. It's like, I don't deserve it. I'm not good enough for life force. All of those programs, those pre-programs from trauma that instill themselves in us, and obviously in a society that permeates, that kind of fear zone. The program that is instilled upon society is that fear of, do as you're told, and you must do this and you must do that. If you don't do this, you're not good enough. The nervous system is responding to all of that stimulation all of the time. So again, it comes back to that. The more you know your nervous system, the less easier it is for the outside influence to control you.
And then I want to come to what you said earlier, which is your nervous system affecting others.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Is there an interaction between your nervous system and others?
It's one of my favourite topics. I just love it. Because I feel like it's this, this sort of, intelligence. I call it the body's intelligence, the higher intelligence, the body's wisdom. And my breath work is called intuitive breath work, because I really get people back in tune with their inner knowing. Come out of this zone, let's get in here and feel into what feels right. When you meet somebody, your body will instantly go, oh, there's something not right. I don't feel right around that. That's your nervous system. Now, if you haven't got an understanding of your history and how your nervous system works, you can sometimes misread situations. So, if somebody, and this is a really simple way to describe it, if you had trauma as a child and the person that caused you trauma always wore a yellow coat, let's just say that, for instance, you could meet somebody who's wearing a yellow coat. They could be lovely, but that yellow coat instantly says to your nervous system, no, they're not safe. So you'll then go to somebody else, oh, that, and you start this, you're in the story. I don't like them. They had a bad energy, but it doesn't mean they did. It could be because your nervous system was just like, no. So it's so important that we understand ourselves on a really deep somatic level so that we don't project our shit onto other people. It's really important, because you could notice your nervous system, respond, and then you've got that moment to tune in and go, okay, what is this? What feeling is this? Okay, mistrust. All right, where's it coming from? And then really listen to the person and override that kind of, if that person sends you a signal that is gut related and there's just something that's not necessarily a sensation, there's a knowing, and you're listening to their words, and there's something that doesn't connect and something that isn't consistent, that's more likely that you're reading their energy. So it's really important that we can discern between the two. And that's where I think the nervous system is really important, because you could dismiss someone that's probably really good for you, or you could dismiss a group or an experience or something because you're not listening to what's happening in the body. So
is that about being also, Susie, being about being present and really being able to understand what you're feeling here now, and recognizing what is a story, what is a narrative that I'm replaying, and actually being very consciously aware and present of how you're feeling in that interaction, and what the story also, is. I feel like there's a connection there.
Absolutely. And that's, and life force is that, isn't it? Very much being in the present moment, because that's the real essence of life force. It's just now. It's just now. That's all there is. It's just the now moment. But the nervous system has the history in us, and obviously we're human, and that, I think, is part of this human experience, is the feeling and the sensation and the understanding. And I heard somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they were, I think it was a comedian, but he was talking about, you know, the human experience. And he said, you know, if somebody said to you, you're this kind of, you know, this being of just consciousness, and you just have this existence that has no end. And then you get this offer of, do you want to go to Earth? It'll be over in a second, but you get to feel it all. You'd go, yeah, all right, that sounds like fun. You know? And then you're like, oh my God, what was this? What did I choose this for? You know, it's like, and that.
I always laugh that the people that are alive today, like on a soul level, they like spend their whole life being like, this is so hard, ascension's so hard. Then they go up to the Pleiades and they're like, this is boring. 2 weeks here. Where's the next trauma place that I can go and clean up? I'm so bored now.
It's so true. I love it.
I actually want to tap into that, and kind of flip the energy and life force energy question on its head, because I feel like what we've talked about and what we do talk about on this sometimes is that kind of trauma response. It's coming from low energy into higher. It's understanding fear. It's understanding, you know, you're sympathetic, and how to move out of the red into the green. How can we create breath for the good stuff? Oh, hey, I don't like your vibe, back away, but we admit that, hey, come on in.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Great love to me, breath.
Bring it in. But then I think that is that's when you really come into that space of self-awareness. It's like, once you're self-aware, you can share the joy, you can be the joy. It's like, you know, and even if you do feel those lower vibrational states of the red and the yellow, you witness them, that they don't have control. Train them superheroes. That's what I get to do with some of my group work, is I turn them into superheroes. So all of the things that you would perceive to be negative, again, I don't like that connotation, but for context it works. All of those things, you know, if you put them together, are really quite powerful if you use them in the right way. So, you know, it's not about never having them there. It's utilizing that space within you to come into the present moment and the joy and the green.
Absolutely. You want them there. I just want to say, like, how dangerous would it be to be in a state of safety? Like, you know, that's when, like, I've actually experienced some states like that in my life where, like, I've had a like manic awakening and you're in so much safety, you get yourself in loads of trouble because you only perceive, you stop listening to your nervous system. This is the right thing to do. You know, like, it's dangerous. That's how people get into unhealthy relationships. That's how people get into, you know, you need these warning signs, don't you?
It's all part of the human experience. And this is the thing. I think it's that, yes, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but let's recognize that human experience. Let's not be all too, you know, we need to be grounded. And I think that's all part of the age of Aquarius as well. that sort of new age element is we're moving away from that and we're coming into this very body focused awareness. And I think the body holds the joy as much as it holds everything else. You know, the body holds the excitement and the enthusiasm and the calm and the trust, you know, and it's that's where it starts. It all starts in the body.
And so how do you marry, I guess the most obvious one is dance, right? You marry dance and music and movement. And I do believe that, you know, movement is so important to our, you know, for want of a better phrase, mental health. I don't really like using that phrase too much in the work that I do, but you know, in terms of,
I call it emotional health. I'd rather call it emotional health. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't really like that phrase, mental health. So
emotional health is mental health. So it's affect health, isn't it? And it's the whatever's happening with in your nervous system with the affect health is sending the message to the brain. So if you emotionally are regulated, then you will naturally be mentally regulated. So I'm like you. I prefer the term emotional health.
Yeah, and because I think as well, because as you pointed out earlier, it is so connected to the body as well. And I always feel when we talk about mental health or there's solutions out there and that's all that people are talking about, it tends to be a head fix first, or that seems to be
it's the top down approach.
Yeah.
And it's working with the bottom up approach, like say the movement, the breath, the somatics, the energetic movement. And so I'm doing a movement is medicine. There's a wonderful woman called Emma the Alchemist that people may have heard of, and a lovely lady who's trained with her. She does movement is medicine, and we're going to combine it with the breath. The breath is medicine. And we're going to have an amazing workshop, which is about just dancing, celebrating the body, getting the energy moving, getting the body open. And then we're going to drop into a really sort of deeply shamanic breathwork session to just let everything permeate and come up to the top. So the fact that you mentioned dance and movement, I mean, it's just so important. It's really anything that gets the body moving. Absolutely 100%. It's about getting the body moving.
Why is that important from a nervous system point of view? How does it affect the nervous system?
Movement is all to do with the vagus nerve as well. It's like, you know, any sort of movement and sound that activates the vagus nerve is allowing the body into that safe zone. So freeze response is where you're not doing anything. So the body will just automatically start to think, well, okay, well, if we're not moving, then we need to reserve all our resources as well and start to shut things down. But that movement, and especially if you're doing it to music that gives you that high frequency, you know, and it's the same as chanting Om. You know, I do another one called Vu, which by Pete Levine, who's a trauma specialist. That Om or Vu, whatever you chant, that vibration stimulates the vagus nerve. And again, the vagus nerve, the stronger your vagus nerve, the stronger your vagal tone, and the more vagal tone you've got, the more resilience to life you have. So your vagus nerve is really important, and it's part of your safety network. It works. It's called the vagus nerve because it's after vagabond, because it's everywhere. It's the biggest nerve. It just wanders everywhere. It's responsible for everything. And the stronger your vagus nerve, the stronger your vagal tone. The stronger your vagal tone, the more resilience you have to life.
And to me, your vagal tone is like your state. When you're saying story, not a state, it's interesting. My guides always say that they're like, overwhelm is the feeling of not receiving. Like when you're in overwhelm, you've like stopped yourself, you've contracted receiving. And what I'm seeing in this moment is like, the vagus nerve is really how we receive life and life force energy. Yeah. And it's like when that nerve is contracted, or when that nerve is
not stimulated,
then we're experiencing life without actually receiving life and life force energy. And so it's like, how can you stimulate your own receptivity? By humming,
chanting, singing, gargling, breathing. Yeah, I mean, there's many different ways you can stimulate the vagus nerve. Hugging, being around people that you trust, You know, vagus nerve is all part of the polyvagal and the safety and connection thing. And when you increase your vagal tone, you increase what we call the window of tolerance. And that is your ability to tolerate fluctuating emotions. So when you're in trauma, your window gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's why things that you may have been able to deal with very easily 5 years ago, because, you know, you hadn't, the nervous system was able to cope at that point. You go into that space and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can't deal with that anymore, because your window's got smaller and smaller. So things like breathwork stimulate and strengthen vagal tone, make this window bigger. The more you can make your nervous system flexible as well to go up and down the colours, it gets bigger and bigger. And so you can have something affect you and you're like, oh, all right, 2 years ago that would have blown my mind and I couldn't have dealt with that. But now, and you're fine. Because you're in your tolerance. Your vagal tone has strengthened your tolerance to deal with fluctuating emotions.
Wow.
And do you think that meditation also improves that as well? Is that part of the toolkit that you think can do that, or is that
I personally don't use as in the sitting down meditation, because I think if someone has a very active nervous system, that's quite difficult, and that can actually cause them more problems because they're getting cross with themselves. I do a walking meditation. It's one of the reasons why I got my dog, because I prefer to be out in the woods, in amongst nature, and I can really get into that zone, and it's green. So that works for me personally. The only thing I would say about meditation, and I'm going to go a bit controversial here, but I've seen it in a few, you know me. Yeah, I always like to just break from the tradition. I've got a few clients, older clients, and they're not in touch with their body because it's that age of Pisces, New Age movement, where they're so into the meditation. The minute any feelings of discomfort come up, they go into a meditation. So they're not actually connecting to what's happening in the body. They're actually disassociating, because you can't just meditate your way out of an uncomfortable feeling. That is disassociation. You can't use it in that context. You can use it to calm the mind and restore calm after you've dealt with something. But what I've seen, and it's becoming a little bit more common in more so in the older generation, that they jump straight into a meditation and they're completely disassociating from the feeling in the body. They're not sitting with the discomfort. And that's not helpful. So in that instance, I've told them, stop meditating. Go into that feeling. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's going to be unpleasant, but work with it. They've been doing this stuff for years, so they're very in tune and conscious people, but they're still following an old program. And like everything in this world that we're seeing, programs are crumbling, whether it be spiritual, whether it be, governments, whatever. Everything has to change. Nothing can stay the same. And so what you may have always done is not going to give you what you need now, because our physiology is changing with the way that we're heightening the consciousness on the planet. So it's recognizing when it works and when it doesn't. Being aware of why you're using it.
And thank you so much for saying that, because spiritual bypassing is it's not just in the older generations, it's a massive problem in the awakening community.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important, if you're not feeling, you're not healing.
Yeah.
If you are not feeling, you are not healing. The only way to heal is to feel it out. And whether you are using medicine to not feel, meditation to not feel, whatever it is to not feel, you are not healing if you are not feeling.
Yeah.
And actually what I'm hearing is if you can feel, if you can bring that meditation down into the body and use it to sit within the feeling, then you're increasing your range. Then you're able to feel within the range, because the meditation essentially is the range. It's just if you're not in the body within the range, then you're not increasing the range.
Yeah. and your ability to connect to your needs. Your body does what it does because it wants your attention.
Yeah.
So if you're not giving your body attention, then we go into that dis-ease. Then we go into all of these, it expands and expands and expands. One thing I do say to my clients is ask it questions, ask your body questions. What are you trying to tell me? What is underneath it? Because 9 times out of 10, there's a first emotion, and then there's a secondary emotion, and then there's the real emotion. So anger is always a secondary emotion. There's normally something underneath the anger. And 9 times out of 10, especially with what we're clearing on a collective level and a personal level right now, what sits at the bottom of all of this is shame. Shame is a big one right now, but people don't want to go there because it's shame. But it's ask it a question. It's like, how old are you? Ask your pain, how old are you? And speak to your pain, speak to the uncomfortable sensations like you would speak to a young child, with kindness and compassion. Really open a dialogue with it, because you can still meditate and have that conversation, because sometimes that makes it easier. If you have been someone that has not been able to open the range, like you're saying, get into the body, start with a conversation with yourself, with your body.
That's beautiful.
Gosh, that feels like really powerful advice. And I always say we've got the 3 brain centers. What does your gut tell you? What's your heart saying? And then come up to the head. There's so much information that is being sent to us as signals, as insight, all the time. We are huge data processing machines.
Oh, completely. And hey, listen, if you trust your gut and your heart, you will never second guess your mind. You just won't. Yeah.
I also just want to say, because I felt the activation of you talking about shame, and this show is always an activation. And from the shadow work point of view that I work in, shame is the feeling of being overpowered. So where you hold shame is because you experienced being overpowered. And I just want to say that the reason shame is so hard to feel is because it is so against the nature of our soul to be overpowered. Yeah. That is why, your soul is ashamed of being overpowered because it's so untrue for who you are. And so if you remember that that experience that gave you shame, and including the collective shame that we all have to feel out, if you remember that it is the feeling of being against your own nature to be overpowered, then you can have the permission to feel it, and then you can feel it out, and breathe it out, man, because it isn't you. That's why it's so painful to feel.
That's so beautiful, Karila. It's so beautiful and so true. And big headline, it's not you. You are not your trauma.
No.
You are not your pain. It's so important. But it's once you cross that threshold, and that's the hard bit. That's the hard bit. But you can breathe it out. I mean, I work with conscious connected breathwork as a therapy, which is getting into the cellular memory of the body and drawing out that unconscious emotion from the unconscious body. And it's not always easy for people. But it's known as therapy without talking, because we don't have to talk about it to heal it. We can still lift it up. And what we want to do with anything, shame, anger, frustration, fear, we want to integrate it. It's integrating it into this now moment that stops it having that hold over us. That's what we want to do.
Well, I feel like that. I feel like I've had a massive integration activation session there. I was hanging on. I feel like all of our episodes came together in this one. I honestly do, because we've talked about breath, we've talked about nervous system, we've talked about shame, we've talked about trauma, we talked about joy and dancing and frequency and movement. I just feel there was so much that I hope our listeners who've been on the journey, I feel like it was a really beautiful part of the journey that we've been on, and that there's so many of those themes that, Susie, you just beautifully, easily presented there, that I think everybody will be able to find that thing that really resonates with them. So thank you so much for sharing with us and having that experience as well. And as crazy as this sounds, because I run the technology on this platform, after we did that breath work, for me, it just improved immediately, the technology. So maybe
you also affect your nervous system affects the internet. Guys,
we're all connected. Hey, everything's connected.
The positive connection ripple effect worked from the UK to Australia. So it brought me joy. Brilliant. So thank you so much. And I know that we're going to share all the details. You mentioned a session that you have coming up, and we'll make sure we share details with everybody that's listening, and that they can find you and your work. And I feel like Karila also wants to ask if you might come and join us on the Lifeforce Cafe.
I do.
I can tell. So we'll definitely follow up with you on that as well, where people within our community can really experience more directly some of your work.
I'd love to do that.
We'd be forever grateful for that as well.
Yeah. And just to let your listeners know that I do the programs individually for people that are designed specifically for their needs. So while I do the kind of stuff that's general, if there's people out there that are struggling with something specific, they can get in touch, and I can help people in that way. It's not everything is designed for you. So yeah.
I know Fiona was feeling my nervous system getting yellow about the Life Force Cafe, and we would love you to come and do a workshop.
Oh, I'd love it.
Cafe is where our members get a chance to go deeper with the speakers and on the show. And I know that every single person in there is just going to be like, we want Susie.
Yes, so let's do this.
Come and do a workshop. But also, who should we speak to next?
Oh, you're asking me? Well, you know who I'm going to say, my soul sister, Charlotte. We do a podcast called The Lightworkers Cafe, which is very tongue-in-cheek. And we kind of, we take the piss really at the end of the day of, tongue-in-cheek about the spiritual community and all of the things that we go through on a very sort of jovial level. So talking of joy, that's us. We talk about dark nights of the soul. We talk about trauma. We talk about the relentless upgrades that we're going through right now. And you've got to get Charlotte on. She's just
love to have Charlotte on. Love to have Charlotte on. Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day, Susie. Thank you so much again for joining us.
What a wonderful way to start the day as well. I'm like ready to go now.
This podcast gives you energy, man.
Yeah, this is Life Force.
May the Life Force be with you all.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, guys.
That was fun, hey?
How fun. Like, just such rhythm to it, such a breath of
I
life.
Wasn't kidding when I said that I felt like it just brought together so much from previous conversations. It brought together so much from previous guests. And I just felt really connected, which is one of the first things that Susie said, that our vagus system, our polyvagal theory is all about safety and connection. And I felt both safe and connected throughout that conversation and fully present. And I really felt everything that she was saying. And hopefully for the listeners as well, getting a sense of how I can bring that into my day to day and what to look for, and, how to think about my breath and awareness.
I loved how it was so like easy to apply, easy to kind of apply into the everyday. And I agree. It brought so this show always comes back to the breath. Hey, it always comes back to life force and breath. It really is. But it's been so amazing to actually speak to somebody that really understands breath, nervous system, vagus nerve, like how it, the kind of science of it in a way, or the I don't know if it's science, biology, but the like what's actually
neuroscience.
Yeah. I loved your question though. I'm sad we didn't get an answer. I'm wondering if you have a breath for pleasure and for joy. Because that was such a good question.
I mean, one of the things that Susie mentioned was the conscious connected breath, which kind of gets you into that more kind of like a little bit spaced out. You can kind of almost, I've experienced sessions facilitating, but also being in breathwork sessions where you almost get a psychedelic, out of body, out of mind kind of feeling. It's actually not my favorite thing. I'm not comfortable. So and that's why I also asked her about the meditation. I'm a meditator. I find breathwork a challenge, which I know probably means I should do more of it. But I'm highly sensitive to kind of noise, and I find breathwork really challenging. But I know that I have witnessed in other people the ecstatic breakthrough that can happen through conscious connected breath. And then when you see it with the frequency of music, a good old sound bath that, can take you on a journey, on a story, then that can be really powerful. But if I think back to our Valhalla episode, if I think back to Jimmy and talking about music, talking to Arlen in her episode as well, The Beat of the Earth, joy for me is music, and I get it through the frequency. And because if you think about it, singing is a rhythmic, you change your breath to the rhythm of the music. And when you've got everybody in the room doing that, you're basically breathing together. And that, for me, combined with the dance, is how you find joy.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to do that today. I'm going to do that today before I deal with my tech problems.
Put on some music, jump around. I usually go for a bit of Madonna, Immaculate Collection, something from the 80s, or a bit of 90s club classic. A bit of 90s as well. I jump around, I sing. You move, you breathe, because you can't hold your breath and move because you pass out. So you have to breathe, which is why running and walking are great mindful breathing tools, like Susie mentioned as well, because you have this regulation of breath that happens when you walk and you run. And swimming as well is great for that too, because with being underwater, you have to kind of regulate and slow down your breathing. So when you think about it, think about what you do and what you do for pleasure, and just have a little think about how breath plays its part in that activity. That would be my take on joy.
Love it. May the joy be with you.
Till the next time.
We hope this conversation has topped up your life force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the life force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the life force be with all of us.